Okay, Luke, I'll try to keep this as quick as I can. Let's go ahead and start by opening After Effects. And we'll get that open. And that will load. All right. And this is telling me that my cache space is low. I'm not worried about that right now, so I'll just hit OK. And that'll get me to this splash screen. I want to make a new project, so I'll click on that. And I want to now import my media, Control I. And on my desktop, I've got this file. I know it by name, so I don't have to wonder. I do not want Create Composition checked, okay? Please don't have that checked because I want to modify, I want to reinterpret the footage before I make a composition out of it. So we'll import that. And you can see there that this is 29.97 frames per second, which is not that big a deal, but there's something in Unreal 5 that gives me some pause at the moment about possibly using that frame rate, and I'm not exactly sure what the answer is yet. So we're going to conform this to exactly 30 frames per second. And to do that, we'll reinterpret the footage. So let's grab the clip and drag it down to this icon on the bottom left of the project window, release, and we'll type conform to frame rate, conform to frame rate 30 exactly, and I'll hit enter. That way, if we create a composition based on this, not only is the footage 30 frames per second, but the composition will be as well. So let's just drag this into the composition area, and that will create a new comp for us. So right now it's playing at full resolution. It can because we haven't done anything to it yet. Okay, so let's start by keying out the green screen. Oh, and there, whatever this is, there's some kind of pollution over here, something that got into the shot. We'll have to remember that that's there so that we can get rid of that too. But let's key out the green screen first. So we'll go to keying, and an easy way to start is just to use key light, drag that onto the media, and for screen color, use the dropper tool and select something that's close to the subject, and you'll get a good starting matte. Okay, so this has a little bit of that telltale, sort of like a line that oftentimes appears around chroma keyed subjects, and I don't particularly love that. So let's go to the screen matte, and we're going to shrink that a little bit. So we'll go screen shrink, and I'm going to let's get closer. I'm just gonna, because I don't want to erode away too much. You can see you can really over choke it. So we're going to just bring it down just a little. Okay, so maybe 1.1. Okay, and let's see, that's already better. Okay, excuse me, I forget what software I'm using sometimes. We can play with some of these other things if we want to. Let's check the inside mask, and let's see, foreground color correction. I might reduce the brightness a little bit because I know that she's going to be in an environment that's darker. If I were smart, I would have like a little preview here for her, like a background layer, something that I could judge that against. So no, we'll leave that fully saturated. And you see, the thing is that I'm just I'm so damn colorblind that I'm afraid to mess with these things. So edge color correction. Let's do that because we might be able to get rid of some of that spill. So edge color suppression, suppress green in case there's any green spill. Oops. And let's see if I need to tighten up on that edge anymore. The edge color correction, edge brightness, I might want to reduce that before I choke that off. So let's see. It's making some of her hair disappear. It's also a good idea to watch the footage a little bit. Make sure that you're not making anything look weird. Notice that she's not at full frame rate anymore because we have processing taking place. So let's go down to half resolution. Or maybe even worse, let's go to a third. Take this to the top again. You can probably tell that she's a little bit more blurry right now. And we're just going to say that this is going to be an OK key. Let's pre-compose this. Okay, so we're going to right-click on our footage here. I mean, I could go further with the key and use the key cleaner and some other tools, but I'm not right now. So what we'll do is we'll pre-compose the footage, and we'll give it a name, girl MP4 comp 1. And I want to move the attributes. Let's see, leave all attributes and create a new composition with only in it. This new composition will become the source. Use this option to place the currently selected layers together into a new intermediate composition. I want to actually bake it in there, but I'm not sure which one of these is correct. So I'll try that one. And we'll open that new composition as well. And I called it girl, so we should be able to see whether or not we are in the right composition. Shouldn't we? All right. I don't know. But you know what? I don't care. This is playing well, and that seems like a pretty good looking key to me. All right. So, and it's playing at full frame rate. Let's try it at full resolution. Of course not. But this is just for preview purposes, and doesn't matter anyway. So let's make sure that we've got the whole thing, and we're going to export this. So let's go to File, Export, and we're going to add it to the render queue, not the media encoder queue, but the render queue in this case. And I want to change the settings in the output module here. So I don't want an H.264 file. What I want is I want an image sequence. I want an EXR image sequence. So in case you couldn't tell how I got there, I just took the output module and I double-clicked it, and I waited for a moment, and that'll open up. So the format, I want EXR. So I'll use this open EXR sequence. That's an uncompressed format, and it's not going to render really a video, except it's going to render a video file as one high-resolution frame at a time. We put that back together into something called an image sequence later. And we want this to include the alpha channel. So we're going to choose channels RGB plus alpha in this case. And we'll hit OK. All right. And here we have to specify an output destination. I made a folder, an empty folder on my desktop called Keyed Media. So I'm going to put it inside of there, and it looks like we're already there. So if you decide to rename this footage, again, please do it before this bracketed area with the pound signs, because in EXR image sequences, these pounds are going to be replaced by frame numbers, okay? And I'm not going to choose Save in Subfolder because I'm already in a subfolder that I made called Keyed Media. So we'll hit Save, and then we're going to go ahead and render that. And, ooh, boy, I don't know what that means, so I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope for the best. Anyway, this is rendering, hopefully. And I suppose I could pause the screen recording until this is finished or nearly finished. So I think I'll do that to save you some time. Okay, so that's just about done. And we hear the success. So let's go ahead and save this as something that I can get back to later in case something went wrong. So we'll leave that on the desktop for now. I'll delete it later, but I'll call it girl in case I have to re-render anything. And at this point, we should be good to exit After Effects. Okay. Now, if we look inside my keyed media folder, it should have a bunch of EXR files in it, which it does. I have to admit, it concerns me a little bit not to see her thumbnail in here. So we'll have to check later whether or not that becomes a problem in Unreal, or if it's just a matter of previewing in Windows. So now we can go back into Unreal. And I'll go ahead and, I'm using 5.1.1 right now, and I do have, you'll see, I've got 5.2. I haven't tried this in 5.2 yet, but I could, but I'm not brave enough to do that yet. So let's go ahead and launch 5.1.1, and I'll spare you the shader compiling and all that stuff, so I'll pause the video again. Okay, so we're here in Unreal, and I actually started a level for you called For Luke. So that's what we're going to open. And this is a pretty cool little, I mean, I didn't spend forever on it, but it's just a location that we can place our keyed media. Hopefully this went well. All right, so we'll cancel this out and give you a close look here. So obviously, I don't render like the rest of the city if the only thing that's going to be in frame is this part. Okay, so I did add some barbed wire. I thought some foreground imagery might look kind of cool here. So to get ready for this, what I'll do is I'm going to check that certain plugins are enabled. So we're going to go to Edit Plugins and search for EXR and make sure that the Image Sequence Media Player is checked, mine is checked, and also look for Composite Plane. Composite Plane, make sure that that's checked. If they're not checked, check them both and then restart Unreal until you're back where I am right now. That's what you have to do to enable plugins. Once you enable them, you have to restart the editor. I don't have to do that right now because I already enabled them. Okay, so you may notice that my content folder has got some stuff in it, and this is just stuff that I brought in from the marketplace to build up this little scene here, including this monster. I got these couple of rocks from Megascans, and this was a marketplace asset, and there's just not a lot going on here, but it's representative. There's a little fence here and some smoke, and it can look all right. So I also made a couple of folders, extra folders here. One of them is called Movies, and it's empty, and the other is called Cinematics, and it's empty. I recommend that you do the same prior to starting to composite anything. So the first thing that I'll do is I want to make sure that I switch using this perspective button right here from the default viewport to the cinematic viewport, and then we'll zoom in again, okay? And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to set up that media player. So we're going to go into our Movies folder, right-click, and hover over Materials. And what we want in this case, not material, excuse me, media. What we want is an image media source, image media source. And you can rename that if you want, girl image source. That is, if it actually rendered properly. Double click on that. And here is that asset that we just made. Let me get my meeting controls out of the way, excuse me, and I'll just dock that up here for the time being. Notice that what it wants is a path. It wants to know where that image sequence is. So we'll click the three dots, and I'll point it to that directory, which is still on my desktop. Honestly, best practices would be to put that directory inside of your Unreal project folder so that it goes with your project. But I'm being lazy right now. This is not recommended, but it will usually work just in the context of a demonstration. So as I was talking there, I lost track of my desktop. So keyed media. Now remember, when you're working with an image sequence, you select just the first frame. So this is frame 0, that's frame 1, that's frame 2, and so on. And this sequence has 569 frames, okay? So we'll select the first one, and we will open that, okay? And we're going to save. We're going to leave that tab just like this. Next, we're going to take this girl image source, this image plate that with this image, it's an image media source, but you'll see when we drag it into Unreal Engine 5, it'll make a media plate for it. So we'll bring that in there, and we will maybe pull it up, and let's rotate it so that it's facing us a little bit. We'll be playing with that a lot. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to fix the aspect ratio because we were in 6:9 when we took that footage. So let's change that here on the scale by unpadlocking it, and on the y-axis we'll say 1.78 to 1. Okay, so that's its width to height ratio. And that will give you exactly that 16:9 ratio that we want. Now I can repadlock that, and when they're padlocked, I can set any value I want, and it'll maintain. It's going to maintain that aspect ratio regardless of where I put this. Okay, so let's see. It'd be interesting if maybe we came up at this. The whole idea that I have here is that there's this ridiculous monster behind her, and she's just oblivious to the fact, and she's on her cell phone, okay? It's just a tiny little bit funny, but it's not that funny. Of course, the bottom of the screen needs to be disguised either with a physical prop or maybe bringing it below the surface of this edge here. I guess we'll see, okay? And I can see that it's not really rotated in an optimum way, so let's rotate it again towards us, and we'll bring the camera down here. Maybe this would be a good place to come up on that image, and we'll find her in the scene. It's hard to say just yet, okay, because what we have to do is we have to add another actor into our world, okay? And that's going to be called a Cine Camera actor. I can use that using I can make that using the Place Actors panel. Cine, just type Cine, and you'll see Cine Camera actor. Just drag that into the world, and a little preview window will come up, but that's okay. And you can just, if you want to, you can put it, it really doesn't matter where it starts out. Just about anywhere is fine. Okay, and the Cine Camera actor is the actor that you'll use when you're making cinematics in Unreal. So let me bring that over. All right, it really doesn't matter where it starts out because we're gonna position that later on anyway. Okay, but notice that it says, now that I have that Cine Camera actor in my world, it says no active level sequencer detected. Please edit a level sequence to enable full controls. So that's what we have to do next. So this is the reason that I created that cinematics folder, because that's where all of the level sequences, which are the cinematic renders, not the renders, but the cinematics get stored in this folder. So I just preemptively made it. To make a cinematic, go up here where you've got the little clapperboard, and you're going to click Add Level Sequence and direct it to that cinematics directory. And you can rename it if you want. So maybe I'll just add an _01 right here. And also what we need to do now is, okay, so this is the sequencer. This may be anywhere, but I like to just dock it right here next to my content browser. For me, that's the most convenient location to have it. Next, what we want to do is we want to find our Cine Camera actor in the world. So we're going to find that. And while we have that highlighted, we're going to click this plus track button, and then actor to sequencer, add Cine Camera actor, okay? And that's going to add that actor into the world. Now, the interesting thing when we have a Cine Camera actor in our sequence, while I have that track highlighted and this little camera button pushed, it says pilot active, Cine Camera active. So I can kind of frame up my first shot here if I want to. Right now, I'm not going to be that picky about it, but let's just have this here. Also, anything that's kinematic that you want to be happening during your sequence, that has to be inside the sequence as well. And I had an animation playing on this actor right here. So while that actor is highlighted, and you can click on it here or in the world, we're going to go track, actor to sequencer. This time it'll be the Necromonster because I've got him selected. And notice that that comes with an animation track. This character came with some animations, so I'll go ahead and I'll add an animation to that. And I happen to know the one that I like is called Rage 2, okay? So this will happen, and I want to extend these sections out to the duration of my sequence here. So the thing about that, though, is that we want this to be the correct duration, and I think that it was about, if my memory serves, I looked at the duration while it was in After Effects, and I think it was around 10 seconds. Some preliminary things I guess I should have mentioned earlier is that this defaults to 30 frames per second. But if your footage was not 30 frames per second, before creating your Cine Camera actor and all that stuff, set this to whatever frame rate your footage is. It also shows under incompatible rates for some reason. These are selectable, but that's why I was a little bit worried about using 29.97 exactly, because I don't know why this is in a separate menu right now. So I thought we would just avoid the problem by making it 30 frames per second. That shouldn't cause too much trouble. I don't like the black lines here, so I'll go to my Cine Camera actor, and I'm going to uncheck Constraint Aspect Ratio. Okay, so that's a nicer screen to look at. And down here is that one actor we're still not seeing. Okay, why? Because that's not in the sequence either. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the duration of this to 10 seconds. And you can see it's really this bracket here that determines that. But you can also type it in that little area that I did. When you do that, make sure that you drag your camera cuts also to the end. And anything that is supposed to continuously run to the end. Those markers and... let's see, anything else? Okay, not much else is happening yet. But we don't have the girl image sequence in our sequence yet, so let's go ahead and add that. Actor to sequence, girl image source. Would you like to disable autoplay on the media plate actor? Yes. So we'll do that, and there she is. Okay, so at this time, I suppose if we wanted to, we could figure out you know, how large this is going to be. So maybe I'll keep that padlocked. And you see now it's too late because we are in the sequencer. So let's get out of the sequencer for a second, or let me just go to the media and see if that unlocks it. No, it doesn't, because what this wants is it wants a keyframe. So let's get out of the sequencer for a moment, and I'm going to go back into our default viewport. And we're going to size this character kind of a little bit more appropriately according to the scene. Scale. I hope I have the right thing selected here. Okay. I thought I did. Ah, I screwed up, so I didn't have that padlocked. Let's go 3.5, 3.75. Oops. 3.75. Okay. And I guess she's just clueless. I can take this rock over here, Option, Shift, and drag, maybe make a copy of this rock, and put it in front of her as yet another foreground image to disguise the fact that the lower part of her body is absent. So we'll do a little bit of art direction in real time. And I want to make sure that they're not overlapping, that she is indeed behind it, and that this is in front of her. So let's get that and make sure that she's definitely behind it. And see how that looks. She's oblivious. Okay. All right, so I think that she's pretty good in terms of where she is, and she's in our sequencer now. So, and make sure that that footage is trimmed. What I would do is I would pull it out and probably shorten it, like, excuse me, I'm spazzing out with my cursor, and then slip that into place and then drag that out to the end, okay? So right now, if we simulate this, you can see that everybody's animating like they're supposed to. And I'm still not so much convinced about this rock being exactly where it ought to be. So let's try to rotate that a little bit. And do like so. Okay. Okay, we'll hit escape, and let's go back into our cinematic viewport, and we'll frame up our first shot for real now. Let's go maybe just trying to find an artistic place to start. Maybe right there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to the head of the sequence with my camera. Okay, actually that was probably not right because I was piloting something else. I was not piloting the camera. So let's go back to our Cine Camera, pilot that, and get our opening shot. Do I have a better choice? I'm wondering. So I'm just piloting this around, trying to think of where would be a cool place to have this. Oh yeah, with maybe just the shadow. Maybe just starting with just the shadow of that monster. That might be pretty killer, okay? So what I'll do here is with the Cine Camera actor selected, we're going to scroll down a little bit. And we're going to place a keyframe for its transform, but make sure that we're queued up to the beginning of the sequence first. And this transform includes, you can see I just made a keyframe there by pressing that little plus button. But it does include location, rotation, and scale, and as vectors. So all of these are editable after the fact, and you can even change their timing and whatnot. But this is just going to give us a starting point. Another thing that I like to do near the beginning of a sequence is to play with the focus settings of my camera, which are also keyframeable. So we're going to go to the camera component, and let's set our focus so that only what's in the immediate near field is perfectly in focus there. And we'll start with a keyframe to establish this. 3. Okay, so I just estimated that. I pressed play with the space bar to advance the playhead. And I'm going to add another keyframe there, but I'm going to highlight that and increase my focal distance. And maybe also a little bit of a camera move, a transform change. And we'll key that as well. I can fold that up if I want and just do transform. So let's see what we've got so far. Okay, so we'll advance that a little bit past that point. Just trying to figure out where do I want the camera now. Okay, so we're going to go and put a transform keyframe there. And let's see if that feels too fast. And if it feels too fast, you can actually just pull that over, make it happen more gradually. And now I'll advance it a little bit more, and we'll get our subject into frame. And let's also keyframe, we'll keyframe the transform here, but let's also have her out of focus. And I'm going to increase the sequence length here, I think, to about 15 seconds. And we'll pull this, we'll duplicate this so that it happens again. Okay. If you stretch it out, it's just going to warp the timing of it, so we don't want to do that. So that'll just unfortunately start over there. Maybe what I want is for this to come in starting there instead, so that she's not even technically in the sequence until the camera gets there and she's answering her phone. Okay, so that's not so bad. And make sure that everything is going to the end of the sequence there. So far so good. If you hold down Control or Command and use the mouse wheel, that can allow you to zoom in or out, okay? And again, this I want to only go to the end of the sequence, okay? And that's this marker right here, but we want our camera cuts to go all the way out to the end. And the animation that we've been using, or any transforms that we've been doing on the camera, make sure they go all the way out to the end. Okay, so let's go to the head once more. Just do a little focus work there. And then when she comes into the camera, I'm going to do another focus thing again. So what I want is maybe a keyframe on the focus settings here. And by the time she's framed up, another keyframe. And what we'll do is we're going to edit this keyframe by just clicking it and just changing the value so that, again, it's focused on her primarily. And then by the time it gets here, we've got a far focus again, but I'm going to do some more camera moves, I think. Maybe make this a 20-second sequence. I might be able to even trim this out. Yeah, okay, so that looks good. Did my camera thing work? Hold on, my focus. Here. Did I edit that? I thought I did. Okay, so she comes into view, and we're gonna select. I want to make sure I'm the right track. I think I might have probably edited the wrong value, but that's the keyframe I want to edit to focus on her primarily, and then we'll do another keyframe there. And that will edit by selecting it as well, and we'll increase our focal distance on that too. And let's see. This is not quite long enough, I don't think, to go to the very end. But then again, it doesn't have to be exactly 20 seconds. It can just be as much of this as we have. All right. So I think I stopped with the camera transforms a second ago, so let's go back to the Cine Camera actor transform track right here and see where I stopped animating the camera. So let's pan up here. Keyframe that. That's probably going to happen too fast, so I'll pull that over. Whatever that is. Yeah, okay, and our camera cuts, of course. Keep on making the sequence longer to accommodate all this stuff. Okay, so she's animating. And I guess for these where I stopped with my camera transform, what I'll do is I'll put another keyframe near the end, which I'll edit, okay, by selecting that. And this time I'm going to have to unfold this because I want to change my rotation on the Z-axis to be facing the monster. Okay? So let's see. And that could have happened more gradually, so maybe I'll split the difference between these. You can see how I did that, by the way. I just draw a marquee around them, and then I can drag them in time left or right. Okay, so without making the sequence longer and longer and longer, okay, so the Necromonster's animation stopped, so that cued me that I've got to stretch that out to the end of the sequence as well. All right, so let's go to the head and see what we have. She could care less, after all. It's just a monster that's behind you. Okay, so you know what? I don't think I hit save even once. So let me go to the content browser and save all. I know it's doing an autosave for me, but I'm going to save selected anyway. The one thing that bothers me, though, is that there's not a whole lot of color correction opportunity here. Okay, so we could try to adjust the lighting in our scene, but then again, there might be something that we can do with this girl image right here. Okay, so what I want to do is get out of my sequencer and go into default viewport again, and we're going to find that actor. And this actor has a material associated with it. So it makes what's called a media texture when it makes a media plate. So I'm going to find that right here. Okay. No, that's an override material. Hold on. So I'm going to search for it right here. Materials. So what we want to do is we want to browse to that asset, or just open it, I guess. And I want to find the parent asset. That's what I want to browse to, okay? So here is my media plate, and that's what's being used by default. But there's this one that it also generates with these two letters CC. I'm pretty sure that that CC stands for color correction, because you'll see what happens is that as soon as I replace the parent material with that CC material, nothing really changes, but if I open it, you can see that it has contrast, exposure, and hue parameters. So let's see if we can make use of that. Did I screw up? Let me see. CC. Okay. So I want to keep that open, and actually I want to not dock it. I want to be able to see the effect as I change it. Okay, so she still seems like a little bit bright to me. So what is this? This is exposure. Okay, so let's see if I can darken her exposure, make her fit the scene a little bit better. Oh yeah, that's working pretty well. Her contrast. Of course, it's much better to do this in After Effects, especially if you have the Red Giant Super Comp. And of course, again, here I am being colorblind and not knowing if I'm doing more harm than good. But we'll save that material because I've edited it. And let's watch our sequence one more time. We'll go into Cinematic Viewport, and we'll go back into Sequencer, and we'll take this from the top. Want to make sure that I have my camera cuts selected this time, and click on the little camera icon, and we'll be able to watch this as we've composed it. Okay, so now that we've got that, I'm going to go back to the content browser, and I'm going to do Save All. And all that would be really left, honestly, would be to render this, okay? And I don't know if you're hip to the movie render queue or not. That's the method that I use. But I have to pause what I'm doing right now so that I can make a dinner reservation. So I am going to pause the video right now. We're almost done. Everything except for rendering this is done. And maybe what we'll do is that after we render this is we can bring it back into After Effects for a little bit of overall color grading. I think that might be cool too. All right, so I'll pause the video here, and I will see you when I get home. Or you'll see me when I get home. Making pretty good time for a guy like me. I'm at 42 minutes right now. So I'm hitting pause, and I will talk to you shortly. Okay, well, thanks for waiting, and I'm back. And like I said, all that's left is to actually render this out. So we've got our in and out points here set, and I'll just bring this cursor back to the top or hit return to 0. Essentially what I want to make sure of is that I've got the camera cuts track selected, and that I'm looking through that camera, okay, because ultimately this is our video. There are various nuances to this. If you want to render this in the way that I'm accustomed to, again, you're going to have to go to Edit Plugins and make sure that you've got the Movie Render Queue. Okay, this feature right here called Movie Render Queue enabled. Otherwise, it'll enable you to just render out like an AVI file, but this can deliver higher quality with the Movie Render Queue. So if I had to do just a quick render of these slightly under 20 seconds worth of footage, what I could do is I could click on the little slate icon here, and this is the Movie Render Queue. So really the best way to do this would be as a, once again, an image sequence. So before I get ahead of myself here, I'll go onto my desktop in my computer and again make a new folder. Let me see if I know how to do this. Is it Control-Shift-N? Okay, yeah, okay. Control Shift N on Windows, and I'll call this on my desktop. We're gonna call this I guess for Luke render image sequence. All right, I guess that's pretty unmistakable, so we'll make sure that that folder exists. Okay, so we want to make sure that we add some things to this movie render queue. For example, let's go to settings here for a second, and we're going to choose our output directory. We don't want this to make a JPEG sequence, okay? That's shitty compressed frames. Deferred rendering, perhaps, that just will kind of like shut down Unreal Engine while it's rendering the output, and sometimes that can relieve your computer if it's struggling. We can also add certain things like anti-aliasing and path tracer if we want even more impressive results. So let's add anti-aliasing here. And we'll just click override anti-aliasing, and we'll do, I don't know, 8 and 8. Well, let me do 8 and 8. Okay, like that. And our output is going to be custom frame rate. We don't have to change it. I think it was already 30 if I'm not mistaken, but I'm just going to reinforce the fact. And let's see if any of this other stuff matters right now. I don't think so. And we should get a pretty good, image sequence after rendering this, but it's going to be yet another image sequence. And to convert that into a final video, again, we're going to have to bring it into something like Media Encoder or back into After Effects. It might be fun to bring it back into After Effects to see what else we can do with it. So I'll go ahead and let me just check my output directory. I don't remember if I set that up correctly. So no, I did not. Okay, so my output directory on the desktop is going to be for Luke render image sequence. Select folder. Okay, 30 frames per second. I don't want to have had so few problems so far and overlook something just because I'm eager to get this done. Okay, so we'll hit accept, and we'll say render local. And soon we should start to see something here. If we don't see something here, then I will abort, because we ought to. Hopefully I've got my camera cuts track selected. I think I do. And usually you would see something in this window, but at the moment I don't. Maybe it's just, oh, I see. It's compiling shaders. It's not rendering frames yet, so we still probably have a pretty good chance of seeing this in somewhat slower than real time. But I'll let you suffer it out with me, just so you can get an appreciation of what it's like to render out like 19.5 seconds of fucking video from the movie render queue, even with pretty modest settings. So this ought to be pretty funny. So it's still compiling shaders. Oh yeah, have plenty of fun with that. I don't even have my material settings on epic or high or anything. I don't even remember if my lighting is set to production. But this is going to look fabulous regardless. I didn't even turn on the path tracer. I suppose I should have done that as well. I hope I'm entertaining you, by the way, while you are watching that sort of thing happen. So this should start processing frames any second now. Oh yeah, there it goes. It's on frame number 1 of 585. Oh, now it's on frame number 2 of 585. Do you want to suffer this out with me? Really? Do you want to? I doubt it. So I'll tell you what, I'll pause the video on your behalf one more time. And just spare you that much, okay? And we'll hit pause. Okay, it's the next day, and I did have to re-render your image sequence because I fell asleep while it was rendering, and there was an error during the render. So I tweaked some things in my movie render queue, I rendered it again, and then I brought those into After Effects, screwed around with some color correction. I don't know if I did it well or not because of my color blindness, but the result is that I then sent that to the Adobe Media Encoder queue and just exported an H.264 video file. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to bring that file in to my screen recorder. So give me 1 second. Okay, so I think it's recording my voice still because this is a little awkward. I'm inside the screen recording software that I've been using to make this tutorial for you. So there's the video that I just imported. This is the MP4 that I exported from the Adobe Media Encoder queue. It is there where I changed it to H.264 and rendered it out. I don't remember if I mentioned, though, that before I did any of this, I imported the initial image sequence into After Effects just so I could do a little bit of color correction. But there it is. Okay, so you can see it looping, and I hope you enjoy. Take care. Bye-bye.